The title of this video is Your Soul Revealed: How to Connect and Ascend. Religions talk about us having a soul and the need to save our souls, but I've discovered some attributes of the soul that make it far more important than this. Your soul is your most important and valuable spiritual resource. And as I continue, you'll come to understand why that is so. In fact, it is the key to your whole evolution, and it's where you'll find yourself after your current life. Not many people think much about their soul. In fact, for most, it seems to be something kind of distant, maybe even unimportant. But haven't you wondered about your soul? Where is it? What does it look like? What does it do? And why, if it's yours, can't you seem to find it? Now, adding to the confusion, you have enlightened teachers out there, often focused on getting us to transcend any ideas of self or individuality. They want you to go into non-duality. And certainly, they don't talk much about the soul. They want you to detach from everything. But detaching, surrendering, letting go is important for anybody who's on a spiritual path. But what does that have to do with the soul? Well, perhaps a big part of the problem is that the soul's not physical, and therefore you can't measure it with any physical senses or instruments. So this means it's outside of science. And so that pretty much relegates it to religion. And this puts you at the mercy of the conflicting opinions of various religious teachers. Much of what I'm going to be telling you is what I have found from spending many years, decades in fact, of meditative introspection, getting to know the soul as a very specific idea of discovering. And I've also worked with quite a few thousands of people that I've done in my private sessions with them. And I've developed a refined clairvoyant ability to see the soul and its attributes and to interact with a person's soul, as well as many other non-physical entities and subtle energies. In fact, for over 30 years, I taught hundreds of people how to do this as well. And many of them became clairvoyant, subtle energy healers themselves. So what I'm about to tell you in this video represents contact and direct communication with souls and the subtle energies in the aura and chakra system of many tens of thousands of people. And so I feel quite comfortable operating in these finer dimensions. For me, it is as real and as natural as it is for most people to get to know their friends. Now, you might even think that seeing, feeling, and understanding subtle energies and realms should be something that's natural for everybody to do. And I think in some ways it is. But it usually takes training and a whole lot of practice to get good at doing it. And since I've successfully trained hundreds of people to do just this, I know that you can do it as well. If you apply yourself to it, if you're willing to put in the time, I know you can learn to do it. Now, I'm not trying to recruit you to taking my classes because I no longer teach classes. And I really haven't taught them for many years. But what I'm working toward is to put as much of what I've covered in classes in these meditations and talks that I'm doing on YouTube. And they're all free. If you want to develop psychic skills, I put some resources that you can look into in the description of this video. There was a point a number of years ago when I had to admit to myself that I really don't know much about what the soul is. And just the fact that I remember admitting that, it was stunning. It's like, whoa, think about it. There's billions of people on this planet. Nearly all of them will give you a blank stare if you ask them anything about the soul. And I had to admit, I didn't know anything about the soul either. Of course, I'd heard of it. But if you do a search on the internet, you're going to find more information about soul movies and soul music than the human soul. And in fact, if you look up the dictionary definition of the soul, you'll see just how little is known about the soul. And I'll just leave that to you to look it up for yourself, and you'll see what I mean. So as I talk about the soul, I want you to be thinking about your soul and begin getting to know it better. So start with a view that it's always been with you. It is sometimes called your true self. And the reason it's called that because that's actually what you are. You are a soul incarnated in a physical body, having a physical human experience. So it's really what you are at your core. Now, I have found that all souls have many wonderful, beautiful qualities, all in common. And I'm going to list some here. It's quite a long list, actually. Such things as joyfulness. You see, the soul is always happy and it feels joyful all the time. It's also very peaceful. It has a quietness. It is purity and aware. And it even has a curiosity. It feels fulfillment. It feels complete. It feels satisfied. And it also is at one with all there is. It's what connects you with your divine self. It's what connects you with God. In fact, the soul is your interface into all the higher spiritual realms. And so it's also boundless. It is creative. It is thoughtful of the needs of others. It is eternal, so it exists in a timelessness. It even has a playful quality. It is gentle. It is grateful. It is in harmony. It is radiant, warm-hearted. And above all, the soul is deeply loving and caring. And it has a desire to expand into more of all it is. So it's always in a process of having experiences. And this is what I call vertical enlightenment and our vertical evolution. And I go into this quite a bit more in my handbook for enlightenment. So when I discovered all of this about the soul, you can see why I thought it is a really exciting, important to discover more about the soul and to ultimately merge with the soul and to bring it into our everyday experience. So I recorded a program that I titled Soul Merge to help everybody with this process. And this audio program is available on my website. Most of the time, most people are not concerned about their souls or even exploring the depths of what real spiritual evolution is, because they're focused on whatever is distracting them at the moment, whatever their current interest is, whatever they're experiencing through the senses or through some emotional state. And they're basically trying to figure out how to get to another more pleasurable, satisfying physical, financial, emotional, or healthier state. Most people I find are just trying to escape their current state to get into a better, happier state. Now, the soul, if it is your primary resource for all of these things, then it makes a lot of sense that we would want to discover all that we can about it and to integrate it more into everyday life. Because the soul already has everything that everyone is striving for. So by connecting with the soul, you're going to discover this is true for you. And in a way, everybody is already hooked up to their soul. In fact, you can't really disconnect from it. But most people don't make any kind of a conscious connection with it. And you can know this when you experience something beautiful and profound and creative and loving, either with people or activities or when you're out in nature. So these are ways that you already are in touch with your soul. And you see the soul is reflected in the relentless pursuit of perfection that you find among people who are really pursuing becoming the best, whether they're scientists or musicians or artists or athletes or business people. And you find it in the world's greatest literature and poetry, as well as everybody that's seeking to attain the highest of human potential. So the soul is really everywhere in human life. It's just that it's not always recognized. And yet, even though it's everywhere, very few seem to know how to directly connect with it and access it and utilize it. Everything in the universe, in creation, is in a state of motion. Everything is evolving into something else or to another state other than where it is at the present moment. And this is true whether you look at the microcosm or the macrocosm. In other words, you look through a microscope or you look up through a telescope. You got to where you are now through a process. You've been evolving over many lifetimes, actually, and you will continue unfolding, expanding, discovering, and evolving. It's a continuous, unending process. And you will find that as you merge more deeply with the soul, more of the soul's qualities will emerge effortlessly and naturally in your life. The challenges come from the forks in the road, where you have to make a decision. When you make those decisions, do you go more deeply into the soul? And do you fill every circumstance and decision with a deep love and consciousness of the soul? Or do you give in to some emotional reaction or some inner opinions, judgments, criticism, and blame? As you discover more of the soul, you're going to find that you experience an emerging empowerment. And this empowerment brings a certain presence through that carries a dignity and an inner strength and a refinement and respect and a feeling of well-being and some deep inner knowing that goes all beyond senses. If you make decisions to cultivate and integrate deepening soul realizations, then you're going to evolve your relationship with your emotions, your philosophical, psychological, and spiritual consciousness. The soul brings a comprehensive shift, internal and external, into your life. And I'm not talking about escaping into a blissful transcendence like many meditators are seeking, but rather a recognition that you are an evolving being and you are part of an evolutionary process. You are in process, and there is a transcendent spiritual aspect to who you are. And that transcendent aspect comes through the soul. The soul is your interface with God, with all of higher realities and experiences and all the higher dimensional existences. And that divine intelligence that created your soul gave birth to you. And because it loves you and it wants you to experience as much as possible, it puts all opportunities at your feet and allows you to make the choices so you can experience whatever you want to experience. Now, if this sounds overwhelming to you, it really isn't, because the soul itself is guiding all of these processes of your evolution. And the soul's resources extend beyond all that you have learned or forgotten in school, in church, in temple, in synagogue, and all of your lifetimes. The soul is your greatest resource. It has access to anything that you're ready to accept and allow yourself to receive. And once you understand that your life at this moment is part of a much larger continuum than just a few decades that you're going to inhabit your current body, you open yourself to a high calling on a noble journey of cooperatively joining with your soul in its evolution. And you can come to know all of this and a whole lot more by saying yes with your intention and your free will. And this opens you to feeling the soul strength coming through your heart. And you'll begin to automatically awaken your mind to what consciousness is and what the soul is that is expressing through you at every moment of every day. Now, because the most meaningful transformations and the most important and meaningful integrations of all that I've been talking about is going to come through meditation. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to guide a recorded meditation to follow this discussion. The meditation is titled Meditation to Heal Your Heart and Activate Your Spiritual Awakening. So I'll join you there.